am not Greg Tepper. I'm Ashley Pickle. But that's Greg Powers. And this is This Week
in Cruton.
It is This Week in Recruiting, where we take a look at some of the top prospects in the state. Of course, joined by Next Level Athletes Greg Powers, and as, of course, presented by our good chicken friends, as Tepper loves to say, at Chicken Express. Powers, how you doing, bud?
Great. And I have to say, like, if you're in a hurry and you're at work, you only have a small amount of time to eat, you're in school and you have a short lunch break, Chicken Express does a great job.
They do.
An absolutely terrific job of getting you through that line and getting you fed. And not only do they give you fast service, it's a hearty meal every time.
See, you're a much better salesman than Tepper is when it comes to this. So
Fair
thank
enough,
you for
fair
doing
enough.
Chicken Express right for a week. But here we go. All right, we will go ahead and get started with This Week in Recruiting, starting, of course, with our prospect on the rise. This time headed down to the 210 as we go down to San Antonio to take a look at San Antonio Southside's quarterback, Richard Torres, and a guy that undoubtedly passes the eyeball test when he gets off the bus at 6'6", 210 pounds. And an interesting recruiting story here. Picked up his first offer on March 1st from UTSA. 8 more offers after that from a multitude of Power 5 schools. After he got that first offer just 16 days ago, what was it that people started seeing in this guy that said, ooh, we need to throw out the offer now?
They started listening to our valued colleague, Matt Stepp, who has been on this guy since day one. He's been telling everybody about Richard Torres, and when the offers started kind of coming in, you started to see his rise. And just pop on the tape, which we're getting ready to kind of go through here. 6'6", 210 pounds, and he's not a statue. You see him getting outside the pocket and has the arm to really push the ball down the field. And it's rare that you see guys with this size who can move around a little bit. Do I think he's a pro-style quarterback moving forward? Yes, but he's not a stiff guy. And I think that kind of – I mean, you look at that offer list right now. I mean, these are all teams who kind of run a pro-style sort of offense, but they usually don't have stiff guys, especially Utah and Kansas State. They like to have guys in that offense who can move around a little bit when need be, and you'll see him here escaping some pressure and keeping his eyes downfield to find a receiver and then having the arm to zip it into a tight window. It's a solid year again for quarterbacks. We saw the article that William Wilkerson put up last week or 2 weeks ago. His hot take was – is it the best 2-year stretch for quarterback in the Lone Star State? Torres wasn't even in that article yet because he really hadn't started to blow up. Now you can add another name to that argument, I think. And if you're really wanting to read more in depth about the talent at quarterback, not only in the 2021 signing class, but looking ahead to 2022, that's a great article you can find at texasfootball.com/recruiting.
I think two things that I noticed, too, is that first initial step that he takes to really push himself back in the pocket. One, he uses his length, which I think is super big. If you have it, use it. And it's just, I think that's the most impressive thing that I can see from this tape that he's got right here.
What kind of really jumps out to me, too, is that some guys can just have like a sixth sense on feeling pressure, and he's one of those guys. He can kind of feel it, escape it, and continue to make plays when things break down. And time and time again, he does that on the tape, and you can see him there bulldozing his way into the end zone. So he has a good combination of skills, and I think schools will continue to step up for him and offer him as well.
Absolutely. Got to be a little bit easier, too, when you can just straight up see over the entire line. So he's got that going for him. But now we move on to our commit of the week. This time headed way down to South Texas, West Orange Stark, as we take a look at their center, Demetrius Hunter, and DCTF 3-star prospect making his way over to Norman as he committed to Oklahoma. And interesting here, I saw that you put that he was a defensive tackle and then moved over to center, and that's when the recruiting trail really blew up for him. Do you think OU has him pinned as a potential center, or maybe moving him back over to the defensive side of the ball?
Well, he's one of those guys that can kind of do a little bit of everything. He has the size of a premier defensive tackle, but he's really a road grader on the offensive front. That's kind of where I personally like him at the most, and I think Oklahoma's going to have a need for a center too. And I think that could, reading the tea leaves there, that could be a huge influence on what his future may hold in Norman. He's one of those, and a large part maybe because they missed out on Bryce Foster, who signed with Texas A&M down the stretch. I think they had him tabbed to possibly be the center of the future. Where they didn't get him, that opened up some doors for some guys in this 2022 cycle. He's a mauler. He's quick off of the ball. He loves to clear lanes in the run game and just make huge blocks at the point of attack. He doesn't have those, the measurables that you absolutely dream about.
Yeah, 6'2", 220 seems kind of more on the average side.
Yeah, so did we put 220? It's like 280. So
okay.
Yeah, 6'2", 280. He's a guy who does have the ability to move the pile whenever he needs to. And he's a big body in the middle of the defensive or the offensive front. So I think that this is a huge pickup for Oklahoma. And there were no major commitments this week. This is the first week since we flipped the page to the 2022 cycle that no players in Texas have committed to schools at the FBS or higher level. So we were able to shine the focus a little bit back on one of the players down there in that Golden Triangle area who deserved a little bit more mention because he committed in an influx of guys like Evan Stewart and all those guys committing to big-time schools in state. So it was nice to be able to shine the spotlight on Demetrius today.
Absolutely. You always love to be able to share that love a little bit. And that also means that next week there's going to be 8,000 of them, and we're going to have to try and choose between 4 of them, as it always happens that way. But now go ahead and take a look at our underclassmen of the week. This one, Waco Connally running back Trey Weisner finished up his sophomore season, and I think that we just went from a guy who maybe didn't have as much eyes on him in the recruiting trail to start off with until he moved positions. Well, Trey definitely has had no problem getting eyes on him in his sophomore season, just to name a few of them: Baylor, TCU, Texas, Ohio State, USC, basically all the blue bloods of college football. Trey's got in his sophomore season. What makes him so special?
Well, first off, he's the underclassman of the week because Under Armour had their big camp in Dallas this weekend, and he walked away with running back MVP honors. So that was a huge accomplishment for Trey Weisner, a guy who brings a little bit of everything to the table. We have him listed as a running back, and he was the co-offensive newcomer of the year in his district, and really came out of the gate swinging with a 225-yard performance, 4 touchdowns to be nominated for Mr. Texas Football Player of the Week in week 1. So he really came out of the gates, but they have another running back down there at Waco, Connally, who was really good, so he was kind of splitting time. And he's pretty good on the defensive side of the ball as well. At 5'11", 180, he's a guy who you probably shouldn't discount his ability to possibly slide over and play defensive back. And some schools may look at him for that. But he's silky smooth as a running back, and I think he should draw some comparisons to Reuben Owens, who's committed to Texas. They have very similar size and comparable run styles. So this is a guy who's just going to continue to rise up recruiting charts as teams get closer looks at him, as he gets more tape. He busted out with 225 yards on game 1, but he only rushed for 900 yards, but he scored 15 touchdowns as a sophomore. He's still got 2 years of high school football left, and he's already got the big-time schools coming after him and, jumping out on that list: Texas, Ohio State, Oklahoma. Those are the creme de la creme of college football elite. So, sky's the limit for Trey Weisner.
Well, and it doesn't surprise me when you say that he only rushed for 900. I say only rushed for 900 yards, but that many touchdowns, because when you're looking at the tape here, it's almost like if you allow this guy to find a hole and break through the line of scrimmage, he's taking you to church. It doesn't surprise me with those numbers just watching it. The moment he gets past and finds a hole, whoa, the boy's gone.
Yeah, it's like he's got a highlight reel full of touchdown runs.
Yeah, for 45, 50, 60 yards.
He made the most out of every single touch that he got last year, and he helped lead Waco Connally to a 6-4 record in a fairly competitive district.
No doubt about it. And finally, as always, we round it out with our recruit of the week, and this one, a household name that just about everyone should be used to hearing at this point, and it is Frisco Liberty wide receiver Evan Stewart. Now, he was committed to Texas for about 3 weeks, decommitted, and now it looks like he's really got his eyes set on the SEC, specifically A&M, Bama, Georgia, LSU, Florida. Do you think SEC route is really where he's looking to go at this point?
Well, I don't want to 100% take away the possibility that he winds back up on Texas's commitment list by the time it's all said and done. He kind of cited the fact that he wants to make sure and take a look at some of these schools in person. There is a light at the end of the tunnel if you're a class of 2022 prospect right now, that the NCAA will lift its travel ban basically, and these guys will get a chance to visit some of these campuses. And whenever you're a top recruit, you want to be able to have that experience, you know, and he shut things down kind of early. I think that he saw a lot that he liked in the Longhorns program, especially underneath the direction of Steve Sarkisian. But he has offers from schools like, you know, Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, and Florida. And the SEC seems to have caught his eye, and Texas is also in the mix. So he's got, you know, 5 or 6 SEC schools and a Big 12 program on his list right now, or his top list. And, of course, things are subject to change as his recruitment plays out. But he does seem to want to really take his time the second time through the process. And covering recruiting over all these years, it's not common that someone decommits and then winds back up at that same program.
Same school.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's not like a common occurrence, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. So I don't want to say that Texas is completely out of this race, because I do think the Longhorns are going to be a strong player in this, especially because, you know, Texas and A&M are in-state. But he has some connections to some of these other SEC schools. His 7-on-7 quarterback, Nick Evers, of course, committed to Florida in the past couple of weeks, and maybe that plays a role too, because now the Florida Gators are on his list as well. But Georgia and Alabama are always huge threats when it comes to signing top offensive talent or defensive talent from the Lone Star State. And Texas A&M does represent an in-state option to play in the SEC. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one ends up playing itself out.
I like that you say, too, you know, it might be just one of those things that maybe he does get to the point with Texas where it's like, well, man, it's a new coach. I don't know what kind of offense he's running. I don't know what kind of scheme. And, two, there were so many decommits, especially when you look. I mean, Quinn Ewers decommitted at that point, you know. So it's like, well, I went from having this pretty solid set-in quarterback to, well, how do I know now? And it's like, maybe if they get the ball rolling, they might be just back in the hunt a little bit.
Well, I mean, Texas does have another 5-star quarterback in Malik
do.
Murphy on that list. So, I mean, I think that they do have the tools in place there. I mean, Sarkisian has been really hot. You know, Armani Winfield is another top wide receiver. He's actually the number 2 rated wide receiver in the in-state rankings, and Stewart is number 3. So Texas does have a commitment from Armani, who, by the way, the time is undocumented, but went for the fastest time at the Under Armour camp at, you know, 6 foot to 180 pounds this past weekend. He can really move. And, you know, I think they're continuing to make a push for Ohio State wide receiver commit Caleb Burton. You know, I don't think that they're giving that one up very easily. You know, he's in-state, close to home, and I think that Texas does present an intriguing option for him. So you don't have to worry about Texas getting top wide receiver talent. Will they get Evan Stewart again? I don't know, but the Lone Star State's going to be loaded with about 40 of these guys who can play at that elite level. And Texas is going to be able to get guys at that position who can play, and we'll just have to wait and see if it's going to be Evan Stewart or not.
It is always exciting, 1, in the world of recruiting, 2, with Greg Powers in the studio. Powers, thank you for hanging with me today as I took over for Tepper. But Next Level Athlete Greg Powers, you can follow him on Twitter, GPowersScout, or Next Level Athlete D1. Powers, appreciate the time, bud, and you'll have your internet interview with Garrett Rangel up next.
Stick around. That's an intriguing interview. I mean, one thing that really is a takeaway from me with talking with Garrett is he's one of these guys, because of the pandemic, he's committed to Oklahoma State and has never taken a visit there. So that's an interesting story in and of itself. And after that, I'm heading off to get some Chicken Express.